Hi there, this is David and welcome to the Lufia series ranked from worst to best. Back in the day, there were many games that wanted to copy the successful Dragon Quest formula, and they were affectionately known as Dragon Quest clones. Some were short-lived, such as Sylva Saga, Legend of the Ghost Lion, and Paladin's Quest, while others branched out and got their own cult following, such as Final Fantasy, Breath of Fire, and of course, the Lufia series. The franchise began on the SNES with Lufia and the Fortress of Doom, then continued with Lufia 2: Rise of the Sinistros. After the success of the console outings, the series moved to Nintendo's portables with Lufia: The Legend Returns, Lufia: The Ruins of Lore, and finally on the DS, Lufia: Curse of the Sinistros. Here, I'm going to be looking back over those 5 games and ranking them from worst to best. So, let's go ahead and get started. Number 5. Lufia: The Ruins of Lore, released for the Game Boy Advance. This is the 4th and last real game in the series. However, it's actually the second chronologically, taking place 20 years after Rise of the Sinistros. It's a side story, and because of that, it does not contain the traditional Lufia elements, such as descendants of Maxim, the Dual Blade, or even the Sinistros themselves. The story focuses on 3 friends who are on a mission to explore ancient ruins scattered throughout the world to learn about the mysteries of ancient civilizations. Since the game takes place in the same world as Lufia 2, the gameplay is much the same as well, except it's just a bit dumbed down. The dungeons are puzzle-based, and the encounters are on screen, but it all still just kind of drags, mostly because it seems to lose itself and its special Lufia magic by chasing fads. Instead of sticking to the tried and true Lufia formula, it instead adds Dragon Quest 6 and 7 job systems, along with a very forgettable Pokemon monster collecting system. Both of these additions are unbalanced and extremely poorly implemented. Because of the way that experience works, you're actually punished for collecting monsters, and the job system is just bad. Some are 100% completely useless, while others hand you win the game skills on a silver platter. I mean, it can be a nice diversion if you really want to see how the world of Lufia 2 changed over the past 20 years, but to me, I just found it to be boring and uninspired. Number 4. Lufia and the Fortress of Doom, released for the SNES. Like I said before, the Lufia series started out as a Dragon Quest clone, and nowhere is this more apparent than its first outing. The game follows a pretty strict dungeon-town formula, and your characters are locked into their classes with no customization whatsoever, and the dungeons don't involve any puzzles. It's pretty much go in, get the loot, fight the boss, and move on. However, as the first game in the series, I'll give credit where credit is due. Many stables were introduced here, such as the Sinistros, bickering between party members, and the Prepea flowers, as well as a huge world full of towns and dungeons just rife for exploration. When I was a kid, this was the bee's knees, but that was really because there wasn't much else to play. As an early 90s game, it can be clunky. It's the only one in the series that has random encounters, and once you kill an enemy, your characters can still kind of whiff at the air rather than retarget, and it has some ridiculous backtracking. All that being said, I would probably only play it if you really love the Lufia series and you want to see where it all began, as well as become more exposed to the game's lore, history, and world, but truthfully, there really isn't much of that to go around. Number 3. Lufia: Curse of the Sinistros, released for the Nintendo DS. Many of you probably aren't going to agree with this pick because the game is nothing if not polarizing. You know how Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter changed so many things up that the fanbase just kind of revolted against it? Well, the same thing pretty much happened here. As a remake of Lufia 2, it had some pretty big shoes to fill, and instead of remaking the game normally, they went ahead and completely reinvented it as an action RPG. As such, the game is an outlier in the series. It's the only one that isn't a turn-based RPG, but it's also the shortest, and arguably, one of the most fun. While the other games will last you upwards of 40 hours at a minimum, you could probably finish this jaunt in about 10. But if you know anything about me, I love a short game. It plays almost like an ease game, but with 6 interchangeable characters who all have different abilities and playstyles. I personally had a blast with it, but that being said, you have to go into it with no expectations of the original. Don't expect the characters to be the same, or even the plot for that matter. The developers succeeded in making a fun action RPG, but as a remake of a classic game, they failed. Number 2. Lufia: The Legend Returns, released for the Game Boy Color. Normally, I would hate a game like this. I mean, it breaks many of my RPG rules, such as having random dungeons and way too many characters. But, that being said, I loved the game. It takes the best of the ancient cave mechanics, as well as the best of the old school JRPG mechanics that the series is known for, and it meshes them together into something spectacular. The Sinistros are back with a vengeance. The storyline, probably the best on the Game Boy Color, is very well fleshed out, and your characters each have a unique backstory, class, and personality, which is quite the feat considering that there are 13 of them. But I guess the most unique thing is the battle system. 9 of your characters all participate in battle at the same time, and their formation actually matters. Each of them are aligned with a different element or spiritual force, and that flows both horizontally and vertically, powering up your members. It adds another layer to an already tactical, fun game. The only thing that really holds it back from greatness, though, are the random dungeons, because they can really be overly long and just very uninspired, especially after the fantastic dungeons of the second game. However, everything else is so well done that I can overlook that minor flaw. And number 1, to no one's surprise, is Lufia 2: Rise of the Sinistros. This game does everything right. Classic JRPGs are so beautiful in their simplicity, so why does it feel like it's so rare that developers get it right? On the surface, this looks like just another cookie-cutter RPG with turn-based battles and a town-dungeon-town progression. And while that is true, there's so much more beneath the surface. Before Lufia 2, puzzles in RPGs were a novelty. They maybe happened once in an entire game. But this changed the entire gaming landscape, and it made me and countless other fans look at exploration in an entirely new light. Dungeons were no longer just something to survive. Now you had to be mentally prepared for them too. There is a reason why puzzle dungeons became pretty commonplace in the PlayStation era. You have Lufia 2 to thank for that. The turn-based battle system really requires strategy because of the IP system. Do you equip the item with great stats? Or the one that has a special resistance? Or the one that has the kick-ass IP ability? It's all up to you. Also, nowadays, it's typical that protagonists are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed teeny boppers, but back in the 90s, most of them were adults with adult problems, and Lufia was no exception. It's just pure joy to watch your characters grow, mature, love, break up, get married, and even have kids. To top it all off, once you beat the game, it has a retry mode where you can play it again, but with 4 times the experience in gold. Then, once you beat that, you get to play the ancient cave with whatever party you want. It's the gift mode that keeps on giving. Well, that's it for the Lufia series ranked. If you'd like to see more, I do have histories of the games on my channel. What's your experience with the series? Do you agree with my ranking? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.